Chapter 8. Mayor Johns sits in her silo, contemplating the fact that knitting needles are artifacts from a previous world. She carefully selects a pair of needles and begins knitting a sweater. As she knits, her mind wanders to the origins of the cotton yarn and the lives that have contributed to its creation. Reflecting on her own mortality, Johns is interrupted by Deputy Marnes, who brings her 3 folders containing candidates for the position of sheriff. Johns shows interest in a candidate named Juliet, who has proven herself to be capable and independent. Marnes shares his positive experiences with Juliet during a past investigation. They discuss the other candidates but deem them as filler choices. Despite her desire to continue knitting in peace, Johns decides to go down to the lower levels to meet Juliet in person. Marnes suggests conducting the interview in her office, but Johns insists on visiting Juliet's workplace to better understand her and the lives of the lower levels. As they prepare to leave, a dust tornado descends upon the silo, temporarily obscuring their view. Undeterred, Johns sees this trip as an opportunity to distance herself and Marnes from the weight of their responsibilities. Despite being misunderstood as a campaign trip, Johns recognizes the deeper significance of their visit. Johns' inner monologue ponders the fragility of their world and her own role in its continuation. Realizing that now is not the time for speeches or festivities, Johns and Marnes make their way through the crowd of well-wishers. Johns contemplates the changing tides and feels the weight of time passing. She believes that they are on the brink of something unknown, and she must confront her fears about the future. With a determination to distance herself from the celebrations and find solace in quiet contemplation, Johns and Marnes set off on their journey to meet Juliet. Johns understands that her time as mayor is coming to an end, and she fears what may happen to their world without her guidance. Chapter 9. In the bustling stairwell of the silo, Mayor Johns and Deputy Marnes made their way down, struggling against the flow of people heading upward. The energy and recent cleaning had charged the air, and the sound of John's walking stick on the metal steps created a rhythmic accompaniment to their descent. As they moved, they were greeted by nods and whispers of "Hey, Mayor." Amidst the hustle and bustle, Johns and Marnes found a moment to catch their breath and chat. Marnes inquired about the number of floors they were planning to tackle, and Johns playfully teased him about being tired already. In a moment of weariness, Johns imagined Marnes carrying her down the staircase in his arms, escaping the burden of strength and responsibility. However, she quickly dismissed the thought, feeling guilty for even entertaining such an idea. As they continued their descent, the pair encountered a porter named Connor hauling bundles up the stairs. To Johns, there was something admirable about these workers who did the job her knees could never manage. She wanted to offer some encouraging words, but Connor was already gone, propelled by the relentless flow of people eager to catch a glimpse of the outside. Refreshed, Johns and Marnes resumed their journey. Johns revealed her plan to make a few stops along the way, including a visit to the nursery on the 20th floor. Marnes jokingly asked if she intended to kiss babies, but Johns had a different motive in mind. She wanted to stop by the nursery to meet Juliet's father, Peter Nichols, who worked there. She hoped to gain some insight into Juliet based on her father's perspective. Amidst their conversation, the traffic gradually decreased as they descended further. Johns couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and apprehension as they ventured into territory she hadn't seen in nearly a year. The scent of dyes and chemicals from the garment district filled the air, and Johns realized that the post-cleaning frenzy had not only offered a clear view of the outside, but also injected vitality into the entire silo. The economy was flourishing, and there was a newfound sense of connectivity among the residents. Arriving at the nursery landing, Johns and Marnes caught their breath. They were greeted by a nurse who recognized Johns as the mayor and directed them inside. In the hushed nursery, Johns noticed the stringent enforcement of silence, which caught her by surprise. The nurse handed them white cloth robes to wear and offered to hold their bags. Robed and ready, Johns and Marnes made their way into the nursery. The signs on the walls reinforced the importance of silence, and the squeal of rusted hinges was noticeably absent. Inside, they were greeted by Dr. Peter Nichols, a tall and lean man with a confident demeanor. He acknowledged their presence and expressed his initial skepticism about being of much help about his daughter. He explained that he hadn't seen Juliet since she became a shadow 20 years ago. Johns inquired about the lack of visits between Juliet and her father, prompting Dr. Nichols to share the heartbreaking story of his son, Nicholas, who had not survived. This revelation took Johns by surprise, as she realized she had missed this detail in the file. Dr. Nichols explained that Juliet blamed herself and others for the loss, leading to her decision to work as a shadow in the mechanical department. The grief had driven her away from her father, and they only saw each other once at her mother's funeral. Curious about Juliet's suitability for the position of Silo sheriff, Johns questioned whether Dr. Nichols knew anything that might disqualify her. He seemed unconvinced of the necessity for a sheriff and wondered why Juliet had been chosen. Marnes mentioned that she had assisted them in an investigation before, but Dr. Nichols remained skeptical. As they bid farewell to Dr. Nichols and retrieved their belongings, Johns couldn't help but question Marnes' judgment in nominating Juliet for the sheriff position. She wondered if his decision was clouded by personal factors, just as she pondered her own willingness to support his choice. With these thoughts swirling in their minds, they exited the nursery and returned to the main waiting room, ready to face the challenges and uncertainties that awaited them. Chapter 10. Johns and Marnes embark on a journey down the silo. As they descend, they pass tradesmen carrying heavy loads, evoking a pang of guilt in Johns for their toil. Doubt begins to creep into Johns as they reach the 30th floor, realizing the difficulty of the descent. They observe the upper water treatment plant and notice the changes in the silo's structure. The floors, sparsely populated, draw their attention, with the silo servers symbolizing the power and hope of the community. Johns contemplates the unspoken hope within the silo, the possibility of life outside, and the vital role of it in making it feasible. Feeling weary, Johns and Marnes take a rest on the 34th floor. They engage in a conversation about the selection process for important roles in the silo and the need for approval from it. Johns decides to visit it in person to informally discuss her nominations. Meanwhile, they observe the stringent security measures in place, even for staff members. They are shown into a conference room to meet with Bernard Holland, the head of it. Johns and Marnes marvel at the size and grandeur of the department. They discuss the recent cleaning and the improvement in atmospheric toxin levels. Johns presents her list of candidates for the sheriff position, intending to have them approved by Bernard. However, to her surprise, Bernard already has a candidate in mind: Billings. A tense discussion ensues as Johns and Marnes express their disagreement with Bernard's choice. Bernard reveals that their preferred candidate has been implicated in irregularities and improper claims within the department. Despite not making any formal accusations, Bernard suggests that the candidate is unsuitable for a career in high law. Johns takes offense to Bernard's insinuations and firmly states that she will consider their preferred candidate regardless. She emphasizes the importance of her role as mayor in making decisions for the silo. As the meeting concludes, Johns retrieves the contract for their preferred candidate and folds it in half, signaling her determination to proceed with the nomination. She rebukes Bernard for betraying her trust and insists on leaving, despite his efforts to offer hospitality. Johns and Marnes request a refill of their water canteens before they depart, with Bernard observing their exchange intently. The chapter concludes as Johns and Marnes prepare to continue their descent, with the revelation of the tensions and power dynamics within the silo. Chapter 11. The weariness of the climb weighs heavily on Johns as she descends through the silo. Doubt seeps into her mind, making her question if this journey is just an exercise in futility. But she remains fixated, driven by the need to convince Juliet, a woman from mechanical, to take on the important job and prove Bernard wrong. Johns, an old and experienced mayor, senses that her time at the helm is coming to an end. She realizes that the most important thing she can do for the silo is to ensure her legacy endures without power abuses or uprisings. The tiredness in her legs is matched by a newfound awareness of the strings Bernard has woven throughout the silo, and she knows that she and Marnes must act. As they make their way down to the landing, Johns realizes they have veered off course and are passing through the hydroponic gardens. The scent of lush vegetation fills the air, highlighting their deviation from the stairs. They encounter a porter carrying sacks of fruit, and Johns thanks him before they enter the gardens. The sight of the workers tending to the plants and the sense of fresh produce awaken Johns' appreciation for their hard work. Upon reaching the tasting and dining halls, Johns and Marnes leave their bags and venture further into the vast network of the hydroponic gardens. They reminisce about the past, including a hilarious rabbit theft that had baffled law enforcement. Marnes reflects on the tension that existed before Allison's cleaning and how Holston, the former sheriff, had sensed the impending madness. After a satisfying dinner, the pair retired to their separate guest rooms. Johns couldn't help but feel disappointed, not only by the wasted rooms but also by the missed opportunity for companionship. Sensing Marnes felt the same way, he invited her to his room for a chat. The cozy room reflected the finer offerings of the upper gardens, and as they settled in, the familiar badges and titles faded away, leaving behind two people who could simply be. Johns opens up about her late husband, Donald, and the lasting impact he still has on her life. Marnes reveals that he, too, feels the presence of his friend's soul watching over him. Their intimate conversation creates a moment of genuine connection between them. Feeling the lateness of the hour, Johns realizes it's time to leave. She wipes away tears and seconds Marnes' earlier words about growing stronger in the face of challenges. In conclusion, as Johns prepares to face the physical and emotional challenges ahead, she finds solace in the shared moment with Marnes. Their connection and determination to preserve their legacy serve as the driving force to continue their journey. If you've climbed with me this far into the video, I'd be thrilled if you'd consider giving me a digital pat on the back with the like button. But if this journey didn't quite do it for you, consider donating a like on our next video. Subscribing is your passport to join me as we explore more exciting chapters in the vast landscape of books. Help shape the future by leaving a comment with book recommendations for chapter summaries or feedback to enhance the channel.